Hi, you've reached the Signal Watch. Film, comics, television, sci-fi, superheroes, noir, history, and more. Join us as we examine cultural artifacts of the 20th century, boldly explore the 21st, and try to put it all in perspective. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens. Stay tuned. We're gonna try to make this work. Okay, we're going to give this a go. This is Ryan and
Simon. Hello again.
And Lucy is under the table and snoring, so you may hear my black lab, who is very old and very tired and just kind of puts herself wherever.
I'm thinking about Eddie Izzard with the cats digging tunnels behind the sofa. I feel like Lucy's doing that, actually.
So we're going to try something a little bit different today. We have recently watched 3 movies in a row. It happens to be that the Alamo is currently showing movies and associated with Ready Player One. They happen to be the same movies Simon and I enjoy. The two of us enjoy them on different levels. And the movies very quickly are Big Trouble in Little China, Buckaroo Banzai, Across the Eighth Dimension.
War Games yesterday.
Yeah, and War Games yesterday.
Yeah.
So the first one we're going to talk about, and we're going to do a little compare and contrast, etc. But the first movie we're going to talk about is Big Trouble in Little China, directed by
John Carpenter, who's a favourite of mine. Possibly my favourite director, actually. Although I think Spielberg and John Frankenheimer are pretty high up there. But yeah, we saw it, what was it, about 3 weeks ago at Alamo Ritz. And it's kind of one of those Mondo things where they give you a t-shirt you don't need. And it was kind of, it was great seeing it with a kind of an audience of men of a certain age who were very into it. And I think I was saying to you at the time, it's kind of interesting because whenever an old film comes up on the calendar, you always grab a ticket for it. And they call it, whether it's Die Hard or whatever. And then whenever you get closer to it, you're probably the same as me. You're like, well, I've had a hard day at work and I'm a bit tired. And I own this many times over and I can watch this on TV. And but once you get there, and once you get about 10 minutes into it, I think the sign of a good classic movie is, you're drawn in and you totally enjoy it. So yeah, I had a good time watching it. Although I think you like it more than I do. I think I have a more checkered past with it than you. Because I personally, so I saw Halloween at a very young age, probably way too young to be watching Halloween. I stayed up one night with my dad and watched it, and obviously, I still think that's probably the best slasher film that was produced in that period, or ever, I should say ever. But the one that really got me was The Thing. So I had this uncle who we went to visit him in the summer, and he had a video recorder, which my parents, would always wait about 10 years before they'd commit to a new technology. So this was my only chance of seeing new films, was kind of when I went to see my uncle, and he was kind of a great uncle, one of those kind of slightly naughty uncles, in the fact that when I was left with him, he'd be like, he was a bit like Dan Aykroyd in Twilight Zone, the movie. He was like, do you want to see something really scary? And I'd be like, yeah. And then he'd show me American Werewolf in London, or The Thing. Or I think I saw Dark Crystal with him, and I saw Wrath of Khan for the first time. But yeah, The Thing nearly gave me a heart attack, obviously, when I was about 8. And that really cemented my love of John Carpenter. So, which brings me on to the fact that I thought John Carpenter could do no wrong until Big Trouble in Little China, which I didn't see at a theatre, but I kind of probably either saw on TV or bought the video, probably just, sight unseen. And I was severely disappointed. I was like, what's going on here? This is not what I expect from Kurt Russell and John Carpenter. And it's been one of those films that I appreciate more every time I see it over the years. And I think now, I still, like I say, I still think I don't like as much as you do, but, and it's definitely not up there with Escape from New York or The Thing for me, or Halloween, or, I don't know, Assault on Precinct 13, but it's fun, it's good, it's a good movie. And the irony is, I think, my 12-year-old self, it was, I was probably at the perfect age when I saw it, to see it, but it was almost too much. I think it was just too much for me, like the genre mashup and all the other stuff we were talking about earlier. Yeah.
So I saw it in the theater. I saw all three of these in the theater. I'll go ahead and start there. And I on their initial release, the Big Trouble in Little China decision to go see it, because it was unlike War Games of these three movies, was one of the movies I went and saw, came back to school, and just assumed, having no concept of not everybody gets excited about the same stuff. Hey, did you guys see Big Trouble in Little China? And nobody knew what I was talking about.
Yeah.
But I'd been at a mall bookstore, it was either Walden Books or B. Dalton, and seen one of the movie magazines talking about the special effects, and was like, what is this crazy movie? I've got to go see it. So my brother and I went over to the Showplace 6, which was up in North Austin at the time, and caught it. I don't think I loved it the first time I saw it. But it was kind of over subsequent, because I was pretty young. The humor of it went over my head.
Did you find it confusing the first time you saw it?
Probably, but I found everything confusing back then. So it was just on the continuum of why is everything in my life happening?
Yeah.
And I always kind of knew when I watched movies back then I was missing things. I was missing some things. There were things I did definitely get. Like, the thing I remember that absolutely nailed the movie for me as to, that's what they're doing.
Kim Cattrall.
Well, in many levels did Kim Cattrall get me into the movie. But yeah, Gracie Law, when she showed up, and she was this clearly, I recognized that kind of Lois Lane type character.
Yeah.
And it was like, she's the busybody who's, okay, I get it. I get what they're doing. And that's way late in the movie. We're at this point, and I'm not talking about at the airport. I'm talking about when she comes into the back of the restaurant.
Well, she basically comes in and is like Miss Exposition, which I think when I was younger used to piss me off, but now I can see they're doing it ironically. They're like, well, the thing you need to know about David Lopan is and it's almost like they're winking at the audience now. But when I was 12, I was like, that's rubbish. And the rat-a-tat delivery as well.
Yeah.
They're kind of very Howard Hawks, kind of like,
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I very much recognize kind of what that was, and then kind of juxtaposed against what Kurt Russell was doing, and kind of what, I can't remember the actor's name now. That's totally embarrassing.
Which one? Is it Wang? Dennis Dunn?
Yes.
Yeah.
What Dennis Dunn was doing.
He was in Prince of Darkness for Carpenter afterwards, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so in versus what he was doing, and not really getting that Wang is kind of the hero of the movie.
Totally. He is, totally. Because, I think Kurt Russell's the sidekick, but doesn't realise he's the sidekick. He thinks he's the hero, but he's an idiot. And, which is kind of great.
Yeah.
But again, my 12-year-old self was very disturbed by Kurt Russell in that role. Because I was like, he's MacReady, he's Snake Plissken. Now he's this idiot who shoots a gun and knocks himself out. And I was quite upset by that when I was 12, I think. But I think he's doing it. I mean, watching it now, he does a great job playing a comedy character. Which, I think the only person who's probably better in with that is probably Bruce Campbell in Army of Darkness, really. Yeah. As the heroic idiot who thinks he's, the saviour, but actually probably is messing things up.
Yeah.
Worse.
Yeah, Bruce Campbell owns that, I guess. But yes,
it's got copyright on it. or maybe Inspector Clouseau, going back to Peter Sellers, actually. Again, he thinks he's a genius, but actually he just leaves this kind of trailer devastation. It's just luck that he manages to solve the cases or whatever. So.
But yeah, it's this interesting genre mashup. It's got, definitely got martial arts in it. It's got, kind of ghosts. It's and it's kind of this fantasy movie that it takes place in a location. I mean, it's right in the title, right? But that wasn't used very much back then for kind of A, B, or C level action movies.
So I read originally this was supposed to be a Western. It was written to be set in the 1800s. And Carpenter actually changed it to modern day because he was like, there's going to be enough weird stuff going on in this that we need to ground it. Plus, I'm sure expense-wise, that would have made sense. But also, so like I was saying, The Thing is my high watermark for Carpenter, and he had the most prep for that. He had like a year's worth of prep because for the effects and whatever. With this, I know it was like a very rushed schedule because they were trying to beat The Golden Child, which had a kind of very similar kind of idea behind it. So they were like, we've got to get this out before The Golden Child. And in the end, it didn't really matter because this kind of died, and The Golden Child did really well, but off the back of Eddie Murphy alone, I think. But yeah, that's kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah, sure. And on that line, I did also read somewhere that, and we should talk about the connection between this and Buckaroo Banzai. W.D. Richter came in as the second writer who basically did all of that work for Carpenter. And kind of reset the tone. And I did see something go by in my reading about it being a Western, but I'd forgotten about that.
I'll admit that I got this by Googling.
That's okay. That's how we all do things.
But he did have a great line because he said to the original two screenwriters who were kind of pissed off that they were being thrown off, really. He said, I could ask for you to come back or I could quit, but they'll just get somebody else to rewrite you. They're not going to rehire you. So, so don't take it out on me. And I think that was, very kind of honest. He's basically saying, I'm not the enemy here. Yeah. If I don't do it, somebody else will. They're not going to, let you guys do it again. So, yeah. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much the movie has. People seem to be aware of it. Certainly, I will say, for example, I did not want the Mondo shirt because I didn't want people seeing the David Lopan, who is this kind of yellow peril character,
Fu Manchu,
right, on a shirt, just walking around town, who did no context, who didn't know who David Lopan is. I don't assume walking down the street people know who David Lopan is.
I was, like I said the night we saw it, I was kind of pleasantly surprised they hadn't done Kurt Russell's shirt again, his wife beater in the movie, because for a while they always reproduced that, so it was kind of nice at least having something different with the villain on. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's one of those things where it's kind of subtle enough that people wouldn't recognise it. It's whether you want it to be recognised or not, really. Mm-hmm. But then for some people, what's the point in wearing it if other people think you've just got a t-shirt with an old Chinese guy on?
But it does have a hint of, no, more than a hint. We watched Fu Manchu together, I guess, about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
A couple of Fu Manchus.
Yeah. Christopher Lee.
They don't, in the U.S. at this point, that's pretty verboten. And Fu Manchu's really disappeared in the U.S. other than kind of being an emblem of, kind of old racist stereotypes. And so there's a lot of, I have seen some chatter online here and there of people kind of saying, oh, Big Trouble in Little China has this kind of racist angle. I can't judge that for other people. I kind of read the movie the way I do, which is not really. It's kind of about it being an ignorant Anglo dealing with all of this stuff that's out of your realm.
I mean, the fact that also... Well, it's interesting. I mean, firstly, when you said that about the Fu Manchu, I straight away thought about Iron Man 3, where they turned the Mandarin into
Ben Kingsley.
Ben Kingsley going, "Here, mate, I'm a bit drunk, and I was hard to pretend to be this guy," and so they obviously, we can't use that villain anymore in these PC times, so we're going to turn it on its head. But I think in Big Trouble, I mean, no, I've never considered it kind of racist. If anything, I think it's quite progressive because, I mean, like you said, David Dunn is the hero. He's the one that is good at fighting. He's the one that saves the girl, and he saves Kurt Russell several times. I mean, Kurt Russell is, kind of like the idiot he kind of drags along with him and kind of keeps safe. I mean, if anything, it's like, again, when I was 12, I'd have never kind of like work this out. But of course, Kurt Russell is doing a John Wayne impression all the way through the movie, to the point where when we watched it, something I'd never picked up on before, at one point Kim Cattrall gives him a glass of milk to calm him down. And I was thinking, is that like, get on your horse and drink your milk? Mm-hmm. The famous kind of John Wayne thing. And the whole thing is, this is the action hero at the height of, Stallone doing Rambo, who's crap. And, it's
Yeah, absolutely just not something you saw.
Take the safety off the gun. Why is it not firing? All this kind of stuff. Which, as a kid, or even in the 80s maybe, at the time of Rocky IV and whatever, and Rambo, was probably a bit too much for audiences, mainstream audiences. And especially, if you're a kid, it would go over your head. But now it's kind of cool watching it. It's like, wow, this is like this kind of really shakes stuff up a lot,
Mm-hmm. Comparing that to, we just finished watching Buckaroo Banzai.
Oh, yeah. You had to explain to me what was going on several times. Even though I've seen it before as well. Yeah. Well, I mean, the link is, like you said earlier, is the guy who directed Buckaroo kind of rewrote the script for Big Trouble. And both of them are genre mashups. There's a lot of stuff going on there. There's like horror, there's action, there's sci-fi. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think what other kind of links there are, really.
Well, the character reminds me, and I would not have known this at the time when I saw it. My dad drove us to the Aquarius 4, which no longer exists. I think there's an apartment building standing there now, which was basically in a dusty East Side, Austin Street. It was such an underutilized theater that it was one of the first theaters in the country to do the Rocky Horror Picture Show thing.
Okay.
Because they were like, well, we no one's paying attention to what's going on out here.
They're talking anyway, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. Look it up sometime. It was one of the first locations to start. A bunch of UT students were picked up on it. I think it had happened once or twice in New York or LA, and then
so throwing all the bread and stuff. And
brought that to Middle America. So I enjoyed it because I enjoyed the characters, and it had aliens and spaceships and all that as a kid. I didn't really get, it's kind of a pastiche to what was going on a lot in the 30s and 40s in American pulp.
It's Flash Gordon a little bit.
It's got some Flash Gordon, but it's got a lot of Doc Savage.
Okay.
I don't know if you know Doc Savage at all.
Not much, I must be honest. No.
Yeah, so Doc Savage and The Shadow both have kind of, were these super genius guys who can kind of do everything, especially Doc Savage.
Yeah. And
I have this kind of...
Can they hear a girl crying in the crowded room?
Yeah, I mean, Doc Savage absolutely could. And then they also have all these operatives who are with them who have multiple skills and specialties. And I don't know about Doc Savage because I know less about that in code names, or at least cool names for Doc Savage. But they kind of have people they can call on who aren't necessarily part of the inner circle, and they expand on all of that in Buckaroo Banzai too. He's a brain surgeon, a rock star, an engineer, a physicist. He's everything and multilingual.
I'd also say there was a little bit of Sherlock Holmes in there with the fact that he uses the Blue Helpers or whatever, those kids, to kind of go and find out stuff for him. Mm-hmm. A bit like
the Blue Blazers.
Yeah, Blue Blazers, like Sherlock Holmes used to use the Baker Street Boys.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of interesting. But I mean, for me, kind of watching it with, I guess, like less background than you, I was just like, any chance to see John Lithgow and Christopher Lloyd go head to head in who can, where is the top? Not over the top, where is the top, basically, is great.
Well, and let's talk about that cast. I mean, it's
amazing. It's amazing.
In Buckaroo is played by
Peter Weller, who went on to be RoboCop, obviously, and did actually, had a good 80s, really. He did a Cronenberg, didn't he? Did a Cronenberg. Naked Lunch. He did Leviathan, a couple of horrors in there. And of course, RoboCop kept him going for a few years. Jeff Goldblum, very early-ish. I guess Jeff Goldblum had done
He'd done Big Chill and stuff by then too. Yeah, he was pretty far along.
So he hadn't quite hit the leading man fly thing, but he was close.
Oh yeah, this is just before that.
Ellen Barkin, who manages to tear her skirt, which I feel she did a lot in her 80s movies. Clancy Brown, who was only a couple of years off being a great villain in Highlander. Hello, lovely. And there's loads more, isn't there? There's Dan. You spotted Dan
Hedaya
from Blood Simple, and obviously Christopher Lloyd, who'd done Star Trek 3 by this time, and it was probably a year away from Back to the Future.
Yeah, just before Back to the Future.
So yeah, a cast that was definitely going to kind of take over the 80s, really.
It really is incredible. It to see what W.D. Richter must have picked up about these actors who'd all kind of been out there.
Yeah. I'm thinking a lot of theatre work probably as well from a lot of them. He'd probably seen a lot of them on stage, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, and somehow that was kind of it. I mean, W.D. Richter does not have an extensive catalog of directorial or writing effort. I have no idea, honestly, what he's doing now. I know he's on the special features disc, but it's an interview from like 2005 or something. So it's been a long time. I'd have no idea at all what he's up to now.
I read a funny thing yesterday though, which was it was talking about all the different actors when they first read the script and was talking to him about the roles. And I think it mentioned like Peter Weller, Ellen Barkin, and maybe Jeff Goldblum, and they all basically said, "We have no idea what this is about." Or how to play my character. And he's like, don't worry, just do what you want. And I'm like, it's that kind of film which normally would be horrible. Normally you'd end up with, like we were saying, on the Bond podcast, something like Casino Royale, where everything's thrown in there and it's rewritten and there's numerous directors, but it kind of works. In this case, it kind of works. Maybe it was his true vision, or yeah,
I think it was. I mean, there's so many things about the movie that it rewards on a second, third, fourth, 10th viewing of just throwaway lines that people have that, I'm not even talking about like voices over the PA that are just funny. Like this is the first time I ever heard over the PA when John Worfin's still in the mental institution. I think they said lithium can no longer be bought on credit. It's just weird stuff like that. Just you knew they were just throwing stuff in because they could, because no one was paying attention to what they were doing until they had to get distributorship, right? And then they had problems.
I like the John names. I like John Smallberries, and the fact that Christopher Lloyd gets really bad when people keep calling him Big Booty.
Yeah,
it's Booty. It's Booty.
The movie also stars, and this is tying us back to the fact that originally this was all supposed to be about comic books at one point.
That's it, because it feels like he dropped into. You said this, and this is totally true. I think the problem with it, more than Big Trouble, is you feel like you dropped into the middle of the story.
Yes,
and you're like, I need to read a couple of back issues here.
And they had stuff that was supposed to be in there about yet another Fu Manchu type character. That apparently all that got cut out. It's in the special features on the Shout Factory Blu-ray set. And apparently there's also a novelization of the movie that includes all of this stuff. But there's all the question of who Ellen Barkin's character is, and you find out she's maybe the lost twin sister of his dead wife.
Which they do mention.
Right.
Yeah.
But apparently the evil Fu Manchu type character killed the wife.
Ah, okay.
And they cut all that out, but they did shoot it.
And his dad, you were telling me. He might have killed his dad.
Yeah.
In the cut opening scene.
Yeah, there's a well, it's not lost because it's on the special features, but a cut opening scene of Jamie Lee Curtis playing his...
which would have been so cool.
I know, playing his mom, and kind of young Buckaroo seeing his parents
Good Carpenter link as well. Good John Carpenter link.
Yeah, it all comes back. It's a small world after all. Moving on kind of to War Games, which was huge in the US when it came out.
Well, out of the three of them, that's the only one that made money, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because the other two completely bombed. The they kind of didn't make back their budgets at all. But yeah, War Games was a big hit, wasn't it? Like really big hit.
I know I saw it at least twice in the theater as a kid, and it's a testament to how things have changed. That in the opening scene is this incredibly intense sequence in a nuclear missile silo of them not being sure they're not going to shoot each other.
Very young Michael Madsen and John Spencer from The West Wing.
I'm not. You reckon I've never watched The West Wing, which I hate to admit, but
he was also kind of the baddie in The Rock with Sean Connery. But yeah, you kind of expect Michael Madsen to say, bomb rush or I'm going to cut your ear off.
Yeah, but that was the world at that point. I mean, we all were growing up knowing like, oh yeah, at any minute the missiles could rain down on us, and it was just a movie about that, somewhat from a young person's perspective.
Well, that's the most powerful scene. I think I said that. I still remember that. So I when we saw it yesterday, I hadn't seen it for 10 years, and I guess the last time I went to see it was the 25th anniversary. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of scary because now obviously it's the 35th, which makes me feel old. But last time they were trying to push this crap straight to DVD sequel called War Games: The Death Code, which just the trailer looked terrible, so no need to go there. But the scene I remembered really from it, apart from do you want to play a game, is them unscrewing the chairs at the start of the movie, and of course then the computer takes over, and although you were saying yesterday you felt like it kind of held up. I still enjoyed it, but I felt like it was very much a holdover from the 70s. Similar to like a lot of how Carpenter's work is still very cynical and didn't really fit into the 80s. Fuck yeah, Team America type spirit. I felt like War Games was the same, as in it kind of reminded me of like Colossus, or Star Trek, the motion picture. A little bit of Terminator though. I felt like by the end of the movie, when and this is like big spoilers here, so sorry if you haven't seen War Games.
But you've had like 35 years.
You've had 35 years. but yeah, at the end, basically, it plays itself at, you call it tic-tac-toe, I guess we call it noughts and crosses, and it realises there's no way of winning, and then it kind of does the war simulation of, attacking Russia, and it works out the same thing. There wouldn't be any kind of survivors, so there's no point doing it. And I was thinking, well, Terminator just basically took the next step, which was, so let's just get rid of all the people. That's basically what Skynet did.
Right.
So really, I'm not saying Cameron obviously, took anything from this, but it's very much in that era. There was a lot of similar thinking going on.
And there was a lot of stuff like that on the front page of, front cover of Time magazine of, both the future shock aspect and the, of course, the Cold War, and those two things ended up getting mashed together. I'm actually going to take her out, so I'm going to pause the recording. Let's go ahead.
So dealing with the early days of AI, I guess, and it's kind of the flip side of Failsafe from the 60s, with Henry Fonda as the president, where that's like human error. It's actually the opposite of what happens at the start of War Games, because at the start of War Games he won't launch because he's like, I need verification. And of course back in Failsafe in the 60s, which excellent movie, it was the fact that they couldn't talk him back. They couldn't convince him that it was a test. He was like, I'm going to carry out my orders, whatever. So this was, I guess, like, also we're talking about the cast, weren't we? Like Matthew Broderick, this was his first big role, big hit. Yeah,
before Ferris Bueller by a few years.
Yeah, which probably carried him through the 80s, those two movies, really. And he was good in the role. I thought, at the start I thought his character was a bit of a dick, but I think that was kind of on purpose. Because, because he was like, and we were saying, parts of this were obviously ridiculous, but then you said, this was the time when, kids in their bedroom, there were hackers, were becoming, newsworthy. Although one of the funniest bits in the film, I think one of the most silly bits was when they first played the computer, Joshua, I guess Or actually, no. Is it called Joshua Whopper?
So Joshua, I believe, is the software AI that's the engine running Whopper.
Okay.
Was my belief, but that may be from me trying to tie things together that were not well illustrated in the movie.
So you don't want to mess with don't mess with Dabney Coleman's Whopper.
I think the suggestion was Dabney Coleman had taken all of this code that Falcon had developed, and put it on his computer, but maybe he didn't understand it.
Because Falcon was a bit like Steve Jobs, basically. Yeah. But no. So the silly thing was, the silliest thing in it, which we all laughed at, was straight after Matthew Broderick had first made contact with Joshua and kind of played a game or talked to it, and I guess the first threat of a strike had happened. It was on the news, like about a minute later, downstairs in his house, and him and Ali Sheedy were like, "Oh shit," and it was like, well, for a start, how were there any reporters there? And how?
I thought that was supposed to be a day later.
Was it a day later?
I thought it was supposed to be that it showed up on the news like the next day, and they were talking to each other.
Okay, because I felt like they went downstairs, and it was almost like 5 minutes later.
They did not do a good job of passage of time in this movie in many ways.
Yeah,
it's a nit to pick, but it is true.
Yeah. So what do you think about Ali Sheedy? Because you said she was wasted. I agree with that.
I think Ali Sheedy is a talented actor.
Yeah. Do you think she was put in there to sex up the Broderick to make him not appear quite as sad as?
I think that there was a well-known thing that was going on in movies that still goes on. I'm not saying like it's gone away, but you always had to have the love interest written in, right? And then you have to find a way to make that person not just stand there and say, yes, you are heterosexual.
Yeah.
And they did a little bit to make the character useful, but there was a point when they're on the west coast of the United States, and for some reason she comes with them.
She drives there, doesn't she?
She gets a plane ticket for him to fly from Colorado to Oregon, where she meets him.
Yeah.
And that's got to be a 3-hour flight.
Yeah. So
she drives down and meets him at the airport because she's in Seattle, which is just north. It's about 3 hours north of
so she's just bored.
She's just bored. Apparently, no parents care about where their kids are going. So then they have their adventure around the Salem area where he flew in.
Yeah.
On the West Coast. The Falcon says, okay, I'm going to collect you guys and I'm going to take you back with me to Crystal Palace, which is in the middle of Colorado.
Which can I say, Falcon, like great actor, John Wood, great English actor who worked with Burton on stage and stuff, had been a bit down on his luck, I think, in the late 60s, but then he kind of picked up. He played Sherlock Holmes in the 70s on stage. But his character, I felt, again, kind of what was the point? Because they get him, they take him back, and then he don't really do much. He just kind of stands there going, "What do you think, Matthew Broderick?"
Well, I think he was kind of the wizard, right? I mean, he's.
So I trust this.
Well, he lends credibility, right? He's the one who says no. He's actually telling the truth, because the last time everybody saw Matthew Broderick,
that's true,
he was in with the Russians.
Dabney Coleman's very shifty.
Yeah, and now he's like, no, I am showing up. I'm the one who's lending him credibility. Why they need to actually be at the Crystal Palace, I don't know. But
can I just also say, Crystal Palace always makes me laugh in films, because I think it was also in Terminator 3. At the end, they were trying to get to Crystal Palace, which actually was the old safe house for the president in case of a nuclear strike. I think
it's where NORAD is. It's where the north whatever. It's the early detection and command center for our nuclear arsenal.
So it was like they had to get there. I guess in Terminator 3 I'm going way off course.
It's okay.
But to like warn her father about Skynet or whatever. But I used to go to a shopping centre. My local shopping centre when I was at college was called Crystal Palace. So whenever I see
it has ties to like World's Fair stuff, right? There was a Crystal Palace.
Yeah, and football as well, soccer.
Oh, so, okay. Okay.
Yeah, but it just always kind of makes me smile. And it's like, we got to get to Crystal Palace before the nukes. launched or whatever. So yeah.
There are lots of things called Willowbrook in movies, which is the name of the mall that I worked at in high school. So I'm right there with you.
The massacre at Willowbrook. So.
But yeah, I mean, I think they could have done more with the character, but it was not atypical for its time.
Well, he was supposed to be the surrogate son for him, I guess, as well. By the end,
right. I mean, you can see his face, John Wood. I mean, I was going to say this before the end of our talk about this movie.
Been drinking.
Well, but he doesn't have a lot of lines, but there's a lot going on there of his pride in both Joshua and in Matthew Broderick's character.
That's true.
And kind of what he knows they're okay.
Yeah.
Until they're not. Because he the whole time they're having when he walks in and goes, no, it's all just a simulation, and convinces
he's not that bothered. He's like,
the general to say, let's not strike first, let's hang on.
But at the same time, it's counting down. It's got to get like 10 numbers.
Yeah.
And
that was the second bit of it, right? Because there were kind of two phases. There was the bit where they watch the missiles go back and forth, and the lights have gone off, and it's flashes on the screen against his face, and he has like unbridled joy on his face while all of this is going on, because he's the only one who knows it's all okay.
Yeah.
And then the lights come back on, and then they hear from the people in Maine and wherever. And he had said he didn't care if he lived.
Or he might, he just okay. Suicidal.
He was just seeing the fruition of his work, I guess, and a young fan. So what more could you want?
That's true. Did you notice Strickland from Back to the Future? I need to tell you, I couldn't because we were at the Alamo, but I was very tempted to say, didn't that guy ever have hair? To you when he came on?
I thought the same thing when he showed up. Yeah. You're a slacker.
Yeah, Broderick, you're a slacker.
But it's we were talking actually with some folks in the lobby who I didn't even know after the movie. And
he's a bit MacGyver though, isn't he? Broderick, I felt like he kind of.
Well, he's not actually much of a hacker. It's kind of interesting. He has some kind of tricks up his sleeve, but he's more of like a MacGyver engineer sort of guy. Like they don't really show him sitting down at like a command line and doing much.
No.
But I don't know if that would have meant anything to Middle America in the mid '80s anyway.
So what about that thing? So I may have missed it, but did he have a video recorder when he suddenly started watching that film about Falcon at his house? Because I'm like, where did he get that from?
He says in the film he got it from the library.
Okay, so he got something out of the library.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean...
Because I was thinking,
why? I mean, maybe he got it from the university library or something like that. I mean, it wouldn't be totally unheard of. There was... And as a person who works in libraries, I was very pleased to see how much he was visiting and utilizing the library in the movie. So...
and the old files as well. He was like rummaging through the files. And
But it's, I mean, whether anything in the movie works from a technological standpoint, I mean, I don't know enough about computers from that period. I was poking away at a VIC-20 and then an Apple IIe in the 80s. So,
well, you mentioned the flashing lights, didn't you? The Star Trek flashing lights, which it's like they don't need that many lights. They're not doing anything. Those lights.
Yes, the bleeping, the blinking.
Plus, when at the end, which I thought was overkill, when, I guess Joshua decides that there's no point in, let's just have a nice game of chess instead. A couple of the panels spark.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think he would do that if he decided that. He wouldn't short out.
I wonder that every time I watch Star Trek, and I've been letting that go for 30-something years at this point.
Brace yourself.
Yeah. It's like, the panel wouldn't work. You wouldn't just turn around and start using the computer again if there were sparks. But Whopper is full of these LEDs that are just blinking crazily with no indicator of what any of the lights mean. And I had a little chuckle when there was one of the NORAD people walking around with a clipboard checking off as if like, oh yes,
got enough lights.
There's 80% of the lights are blinking around. And Jamie also had pointed out after the movie, and I thought the same thing but wasn't quite sure. This is the first time I noticed Whopper, which is also Joshua, has a face.
I missed that. I missed that.
There's a little screen full of LED lights, and it has like 2 green squares and then like up high, and then in the kind of the lower bottom, there's like this red square full of LEDs, and it's, on a very crude level, a little bit face-like.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say they necessarily give it expression, but they never try to suggest ever that that Joshua, the program, is evil. They never try to suggest it has a soul or it exists as a true AI.
Yeah.
But
I did find it amusing how I think when Broderick has to take out the trash, he turns off his computer and it all turns off at the war room. They'll go doo, and it's like somebody's taking the plug out. it's like the IT crowd.
Yeah.
Do you try unplugging it back in? In fact, I think they say that later on. They go, one of the generals goes, "Can't we just unplug it and plug it back in or something?" So.
Yeah, well, they had to answer the question because I remember that specific moment because I'm running through my own head. I used to run help desk, right? And so I'm watching this, and they're like, "Oh, well, the computer's gone crazy and it's just running, this." And I know in my own job, I would have just turned around to my team and said, "Well, let's just bounce it, and we'll just turn it off and turn it back on again, right?" And
keep smiling at me.
And they're like, "Oh, we can't because there's some fail-safe circuit that if it loses power, it means we're not going to launch." And I was like, "Well, that's some really shitty engineering." But
yeah.
But anyway, that's what the whole movie is about: is
they threw in that
separating the human and all the things that can happen if you just let the computer make so-called logical decisions based on
it's kind of like
criteria.
Keep humans in the loop, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the same as I guess Cameron kind of was saying that a little bit. Like later on, it's like you can't if you create an AI kind of construct, sooner or later it's going to start outthinking us and realizing it doesn't need us, possibly. So yeah.
It's something Elon Musk is very concerned about. The guy, the SpaceX guy, the Tesla guy. He said that a few times in interviews at this point, where he's very concerned we're going to let that happen. I'm less concerned. I need to see a phone work for more than a year and a half before I start worrying about that. I think we have other problems we're not acknowledging before we need to worry about that. So across kind of the spectrum, these were very different movies. They're all kind of feeding in the narrative of the book of Ready Player One. They're all just kind of treated as totems and kind of simulations that you can obtain within the game of the Oasis and Ready Player One. I'm using air quotes when I say game because anyone who's read the book knows you're talking about this massive, sprawling simulation that's absolutely endless. But they're treated. It's treated a little bit differently. There's actually a sequence in the book that they can't possibly do. Well, they could. I don't know what they're going to do in the movie.
Steve can do anything.
Right. But where they painstakingly and not very breathtakingly walk you through the plot of War Games, that the character has to solve these puzzles within a virtual reality of War Games. And I like the movie. Yeah. It's fine. I think it's fascinating as a relic of a very specific point in time, especially from my own childhood, and that I very much remember things being that way as far as the tension in the air about the Russians and the tension about computers.
Did you feel the same as I did? Whereas it felt like it was trying to be an 80s movie, but it still felt very 70s, very polished MGM.
Well, it's interesting it was directed by John Badham.
Yeah, who'd just done, I guess, Saturday Night Fever. He'd had a big hit, and they'd done a version of Dracula.
Yeah,
but he was kind of old school.
I think he wasn't trying to make a kids movie, but he was making a kids movie
without realizing.
Really, I mean, it'd be interesting to actually compare this to Cloak and Dagger with Dabney Coleman, which came out, I think, about a year or two after this.
I think for about an 8-year period from 76 to 83, Dabney Coleman had to be in every other film.
That's right. It would be interesting to compare the two because both of them have these like life or death circumstances that would never appear in a kids movie now. The way we think of what a kids entertainment is now is so sanitized and so without stakes.
Yeah.
Even when you're talking about like Harry Potter, which has this kind of apocalyptic ending to it, I don't think there's ever really a question. Like there's no.
Well, even in Buckaroo today, we had like a 10-year-old holding a machine gun.
Yeah.
And running around.
Which I understood as a kid when I saw that, what the joke was there.
But I don't think, would you be able to do that now? Probably not.
Oh, no. You can never put that gun in that kid's hands now.
Yeah.
No, they'd come up with like a slingshot that, shot putty that would save the day or something.
Yeah.
They would come up with something that they would not worry about getting sued over some kid picking up a gun and somebody saying, oh, he saw Buckaroo Banzai. Yes.
Totally.
But just kind of the existential angst of the nuclear proliferation that has never really gone away.
Yeah.
But we pretend like it has. We've started worrying about, suitcase bombs and, things that have actually occurred in the U.S., I guess.
Yeah.
More than we worry about, well, there's nothing we can really do about, a rain of 50,000 missiles falling on my house. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, totally. And we were 3 years off of Rocky solving the Cold War in Rocky 4. Why can't we all live together?
Thank God, Rock. Thank God. By the way, totally unrelated, but we'll include it. My friend Stuart sent me pictures of they're filming Creed 2.
Oh yeah.
With
Michael B. Jordan.
Well, yeah, but Drago's in it.
Oh, he is.
Yeah,
Dolph Lundgren.
He's in Philadelphia right now filming.
Oh wow.
With his son.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Because Stallone so this is totally off of track, but like Stallone years ago kind of said, I think they asked him where everybody was, like from past movies. I think when Rocky Balboa came out, and he said Ivan Drago became an alcoholic and shot himself after Rocky 4. So he must have changed his mind on that.
Yeah.
Maybe
unless it's a ghost, he's playing a ghost. But
maybe because he did Expendables.
I really hope it ends with Michael B. Jordan and whoever Ivan Drago's son is chasing a chicken around. That's the ending I want to see on that movie. But while the two dads kind of shout at them, and the ghost of Apollo Creed just hovers over.
And he runs up a mountain.
Beatifically.
Because Ivan Drago's son runs up a mountain and goes, Creed! I'm coming for you.
That would be so good. And why is this movie 30% montage?
You have to respect Stallone for, I think, Rocky 4. He had a flashback in a flashback, which I don't think I've ever seen before since.
My friend, one day we will watch Dragon Wars D-War Dragon Wars, whatever it is, that does have like multi-layered, like within, I think it incepts to like 4 layers or something like that. It is completely bananas.
That's like Inception.
Yeah, it is absolutely bizarre. But I'm actually doing a Rocky podcast with Stuart, so I can't talk about it much more.
That's all right. That's all right.
I'm stealing Stuart's thunder.
I would love to hear that.
Yeah.
Can I mention one last thing?
No.
I'll go on. Something I forgot to mention. The scariest thing I think John Carpenter's ever done. Have you ever seen the music video for Big Trouble in Little China? Yeah. Where for some reason they pronounce China. Big Trouble. It's basically like your dads getting together. I was going because they're in their 40s, which I guess is us now, which is kind of sad. But it's like, but yeah, it's probably the most terrifying thing John Carpenter's ever done. Far scarier than The Thing and anything else.
It's the song they play over the credits, which feels now, and I don't think it was ever intended this way, tongue in cheek.
Slightly 80s. No, I don't think it was tongue in cheek.
No, but now it feels like if you were making an 80s spoof movie, the kind of song you would have at the end over the credits.
And it's actually Tommy Lee Wallace. So it's the Coupe de Villes, which was Carpenter's band,
right?
And it's I think Nick Castle and Tommy Lee Wallace, who both played at different points Michael Myers and worked with Carpenter. I think one of them wrote Escape from New York, and one of them directed Halloween 3, and actually The Last Starfighter. There's another link.
Yeah. One
of them went off and directed The Last Starfighter, which is another a favourite or recommendation of Ready Player One author. So it all goes around, all comes around.
Yeah, I we did not do Last Starfighter. I'm not sure we ever will. But I have.
There's only so many
at least
films.
30 minutes worth of talking about Last Starfighter. I guess I can do, and about how disturbing I found all of the
Lance Guest's hair.
Yeah,
it's perm.
Well, and then you can compare and contrast that to the aliens who all looked like Captain Steubing from the Love Boat. It's a Planet of the Love Boat.
Yeah. I mean, I would say with the three of these, War Games is something I don't need to see every year.
Right.
But when I do see it, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's a very solid film. It's become old fashioned now, I think, but it's, it still holds up to a certain extent.
I think they could remake it now.
Yeah.
And it would be...
Well, apparently they did 10 years ago.
Actually, I kind of want to hunt that down because I never even heard
I knew you were
of
going to
this,
say
I don't
that.
think.
I knew
If
you
I
were
did,
gonna-
I forgot about it.
I shouldn't have told you about that. But it's like, no, they should do it proper. They should do it properly. I think that would still work. Of course, it would be Korea now or something, wouldn't it? I guess, but
Oh, you could easily do that. Russian hacking, like now? Oh, I mean, people...
yeah,
it would be very timely.
I mean, Big Trouble still continues to grow on me. I enjoyed it, and I think every time I see it, I'll probably enjoy it a little bit more. And then, I think Buckaroo will always just like slightly over my head, but I mean, it's like, I enjoy it, but yeah, I'm always like I've been slapped in the face by the end of it. I think a little bit. I'm like, what was that?
Well, one of the funny things with the ending of Buckaroo is it doesn't have much of an ending.
No, it just stops. Kind
It
of.
just stops.
So next
like,
time.
it's
Like you said, it's like a serial.
Right.
30 serial. It's like next time.
Yeah, the
join
World
us
Crime
for-
League. World Crime League. Yeah, but they
Stick a wig on.
chase the villains in the spaceship and they shoot at them to blow them up, and indeed they do,
Yeah.
because they
So
know.
is John Lithgow gone?
Yeah, he's blown up at
He's
the end of the
gone,
movie.
yeah.
All the red lectoids are gone.
Okay.
Yeah, so no more. We're going to move on to the World Crime League, which are anyway. We never saw them. It doesn't matter who they were, but
Yeah. Get Peter Weller back. Stick a wig on him.
apparently he was saying very recently, within like the last 10, 15 years, I will drop whatever I'm doing to go do a new Buckaroo Banzai movie if they can make it happen.
I'd
So-
watch it.
I'd much rather see him do that than return to RoboCop. I'll put it that way.
That's true.
But they are talking about bringing... Anyway, I'm not going to get into RoboCop.
Oh,
Big Trouble in Little China, I can always rewatch. I'll
Yeah.
always watch parts of it when it goes by on cable. There are 1,000,001 reasons why I will watch it. Buckaroo Banzai, I agree. It's got some plot holes and it's got some issues. I love the character of Buckaroo Banzai, even though it's so underplayed and understated. And just as the scene came up when he's
On the
just
bar,
driven
yes.
through the mountain, and now he's in the bar, and they're getting yelled at as if they're any band
Be
is
nice.
showing up. Yeah, and right, and then Ellen Barkin's crying out in the audience, and he's like, don't be mean, don't be.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to be that guy. Like, I don't often think that about fictional characters, but when I watch Buckaroo Banzai, I'm like, yeah, he's got his ragtag bunch of pals who are good
yeah.
at stuff, and everyone's elevating each other, and
It's like
don't
Fright
be
Night.
mean, don't be mean.
It's like the line from Fright Night, isn't it? You're so cool, Brewster. You're so cool. It's like he's like the coolest guy ever.
But yeah, I think I'm probably going to go another 10, 15 years before I watch War Games again. I don't need. I get it. I don't need to rewatch it.
Well, it's interesting. So going back to what we started on with me talking about Carpenter, it's interesting because, like I say, pretty much anything he did 76 to 84, I thought was classic straight off the bat. But his later films, not so much anything after In the Mouth of Madness, because I feel like after that he kind of just went downhill and had a lot of problems. But it's interesting that Big Trouble, Prince of Darkness, and They Live just didn't connect with me originally, and yet those are the ones that I kind of find more interesting now because they're not a clear narrative. They're not clearly black and white. There's a lot of things going on in there and bubbling away.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of kind of like, a lot of satire, I guess, and a lot of irony, which, I think maybe I was like a little more of a square than I realised when I was a teenager.
You're a kid. I mean, you're not getting all the nuance that you're going to get from taking everything in and becoming a more mature viewer and person. That's nothing. If anyone claims that they got everything that was aimed at an older audience as kids, they're lying.
Well, the downside is that's why hipsters like these movies, because they're so ironic. It's like, shut up. You weren't even born
We
when
need
they
to
came
get
out.
our glue mustaches for when we go to these movies. Our curly
Could
mustaches.
get big jangle of keys and
Yeah.
very tight trousers.
No one needs to see that.
But no, it's fun. Thank you so much for.
Did you notice how I didn't just talk about Kim Cattrall for 30
I was very.
minutes?
We haven't mentioned it, have we? Really? We haven't
Well,
mentioned
don't get me started now. I think we're wrapping up.
because for men of our age, Porky's is burnt onto our souls. I think.
Yeah.
But no, Kim Cattrall. We know. So I read that Kim Cattrall. So the studio wanted a rock star. They wanted somebody, I guess, somebody like Bonnie Tyler to be that character. And Carpenter really fought for Kim Cattrall.
Yeah.
And they didn't want her because she'd been in raunchy comedies like Porky's and Police Academy.
Yeah.
And Carpenter was like, no, she's the kind of rational one. She's the brains to his brawn.
Yeah.
He's like...
Oh, they saw her as kind of a dithering...
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And she was like... And actually, Kim Cattrall herself said, I talked to John Carpenter and we decided this wasn't going to be a rescue me type person. In fact, she was going to rescue him.
Yeah.
Because he's an idiot.
Yeah.
While stroking his ego so that he doesn't realise that's happening. Which I think she does beautifully. She's really good. They're all good in it, I think. The old guy who plays Egg. He went on to kind of play the same character a couple of times in like Tremors and stuff, but he's great as well.
Yeah, his filmography's a lot shorter than I thought it would be when I looked at it at some point.
Well, he was pretty old, I guess, when even in
When he
Big
got
Trouble.
yeah.
So he probably didn't last too long, but yeah, that was good. It's fun.
Right. Yeah, well, we'll be doing this again. We're also talking a little bit about cycling through some Bond movies. So
Yeah.
not sure which one we'll do first. We're trying to decide if we're going to do a good one or a bad one.
Well, you had a good idea actually, which was rather than just kind of because View to a Kill obviously last time was a bit of a bad one. Well, it wasn't a bit of a bad one. It was definitely a bad one. So maybe do a good one and kind of alternate, or kind of go for more interesting ones that maybe try to change up the formula a bit.
I will warn you, I can't find half of my Bond movies. I still can't find that set, so we'll have to sort it out.
I have about 3 copies of each, obviously. So.
Excellent. That was issued to you as you were leaving England.
I've got them in a suitcase here with me, actually.
All right, everybody. That's all for this time, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. I've been your host, Ryan Steens. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high quality content. So until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.